Hello,
Yep, you did it.
ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming this evening. I think we have a very important topic that we can discuss this evening. And up with me on the stage right now, I have some very important people for the state of Illinois and some of the things that the border crossings that we have down in the southern part of our country and how they affect us here, right here in our community and right here in our state. And not only that, but our entire nation. And I have Representative Dan Caulkins and Senator Sally Turner with me. And I'd like to start with Dan. Dan has had the opportunity to travel to the border and see some of the things that are going on there. I was sharing with him earlier, I've been to the border myself several times and seen what's happening. Notably, I know exactly where the Haitian issue was a couple of years ago and where the people were under the bridge that crossed the river into a town called Del Rio. I'm familiar with that because that's where my daughter lives. Dan, what did you see when you were down there?
Thank you, Jim. Great to be here tonight. January, the Freedom Caucus went down to Eagle Pass. We had arranged to go to Eagle Pass before COVID hit and had made arrangements to, through Congresswoman Miller's office, to go down to Eagle Pass. But when COVID hit, everything got shut down. So when we got back up and running in January of this year, we went down on our own. Unbeknownst to us, the day before we got to Eagle Pass, the congressional delegation got to Eagle Pass, which meant that that week the cartels shut off the flow of migrants, illegal immigrants coming across the river so that they could clean up Eagle Pass, so that when the congressional delegation, the 60 members of Congress, got there, it looked like a park. But we still saw some illegal immigration. We saw people crossing the river. We had a lot of conversations with the Border Patrol, Texas Rangers, National Guard, NGOs. So we didn't see the mass migration that we saw. This is just something about the Freedom Caucus. We are a group of 7 state reps that are trying or doing our best to keep things going in the right direction here in the Illinois House. So here's what's happened. Right now, approximately 12 million people and growing have come into this country. We have illegally, so far under the current administration, over 8 million people from, I can't remember how many countries have come into this, crossed our border illegally. So this is a picture of Eagle Pass. This is the holding pin. And then if you, to your right, would be where the processing center is in Bridge 2. I don't want to read all of that, but you can take a look at these slides and it gives you an idea of what we're faced with in this country. This is Bridge 2, EMA, I mean, all of the things that are going on here and what's happening to process the folks that have come to this country. Texas governor gets a bad rap. He's not sending these people north. Yes, he's sending some folks north, but the NGOs, our government, is essentially paying to have these people shipped. And then we saw just recently where the Biden administration has flown 300,000 folks into this country. That's had nothing to do with Governor Abbott. And this situation is not being created by Texas Governor Abbott. This is some of the expenditures that we're seeing in the House, we're trying to work through the budget. We started out last year, the governor started this health care program 4 years ago. It was $2 million, and then it grew and grew and grew. Last year it was count to be about $1 billion that we're spending on illegal migrants in this country, just the state of Illinois. City of Chicago and other municipalities are also spending tens and tens and millions of dollars. But this is where some of that money flows through our state budget. This is kind of what we talked about. He's asked for a supplemental or wants to spend another $140 million this budget year, or $180 million, I'm sorry. There's no end. There's no end to this. The people that are here illegally are going to be here as long as they want to stay, unfortunately. It's going to take decades, but mostly it's going to take a minimum of 5 or 6 years. This is just 1 year out of our budget. That money is coming out of social services, it's coming out of pay raises. There's a lot of ways that we could better use this money to take care of the people in this state. So here's kind of what our solutions are. Obviously, we say close the border, repeal the Trust Act. We need to send the people back to Mexico before they come in here. We should absolutely abolish Illinois' sanctuary state status. And common sense things that can be done. The president can do it. It's unfortunate that he chooses not to. This is us. If you're interested in following the Freedom Caucus, we try to do something every week, a live broadcast. We're also, we do press conferences, press releases. So if you're interested to following the Freedom Caucus in Springfield, we certainly appreciate it. We want to, yes, ma'am. What
about mandating E-Verify?
E-Verify is, should be, there's two parts to that question, but yes, we should mandate E-Verify. Unfortunately, the Democrats in Springfield have a bill that makes that, trying to keep that from happening. E-Verify, I believe, is not mandatory, and the Democrats in the Illinois House want to make sure that nobody is forced to do it or would be able to use that to keep someone from gaining employment. But yeah, E-Verify would be a good thing.
Dan, what was one of the most, how should I say, inhumane things that you had seen when you were down there?
It's a great question, and there's a couple of things. There are two real tragedies at our border. The first tragedy, the biggest tragedy, are these people that are coming across this border. They've been sold a bill of goods. They've been told, if you can get to America, you're going to get a job, you're going to get health care, your kids are going to get an education, you can become a citizen. All you have to do is get across the border, just pay us $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000, and we'll get you to America, the land of milk and honey. These folks sell everything they have. Their families gather up as much money as they can to pay these coyotes to get someone or a family across the border to try to make some money and send it back so that they can survive. Not happening. They're stuck in shelters. We were up in Chicago and we saw the shelters. These folks aren't going to have work permits. They're not going to be allowed to stay here when they do finally get their hearing, and their families are under a death threat if they don't pay off the bills. I think the other tragedy on the border are the people that work there. The folks that work there every day, they know these folks are coming across, they're going to be trafficked, they're going to be forced labor. They have to deal with these people knowing that eventually they're going to be sent home. And every day they deal with hundreds and thousands of folks and go home to their families. It's a terrible, terrible toll psychologically on our very, very brave and patriotic Border Patrol, ICE, Texas Rangers, National Guard folks. Those are I think the two biggest tragedies that we saw at the border.
Thank you very much, Dan. Sally, I think I heard on the radio just recently about some of the things that are happening in our schools, or actually public schools, where we're putting some of the illegal immigrants or border crossers that are coming into town, or the towns, specifically Chicago. What's happening in Illinois to address these issues?
Well, actually, oh, is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. Actually, one of our state senators is here, Tom Bennett, and he has a bill in the Senate that addresses a little bit of that, and that is Senate Bill 3533. And Tom talks about how when these people do come, that they need to learn our laws and anything that has to do with this, our civics and programs and that nature. And I think that's really important. If they do come, and they are here, and they're infiltrating our schools, that needs to be recognized. But if you want me to continue on, just a few other things. I was talking about some bills. Dan pretty much covered a lot of the things that need to be addressed. And some of the things, bills that the Senate has addressed, I wanted to mention a few of those. First of all, when the governor started his administration, he was spending $1 million. $1 million on migrant issue. And his new budget, he's asking for $1 billion. And as Dan mentioned before, we don't exactly know what accounts those are coming from. And we have asked for a bill of transparency. Senate Bill 3170 is a bill that says, Governor, you have to tell us where you're taking your money from, because we don't know. And every time we ask them, where are you taking the money from? There is crickets. So we don't know where all those funds are coming from. Of course, we know some are coming from DHS and areas like that, but now we're finding there's some coming from IEMA, areas that you would not suspect, funding some of these places, that there's centers where people can come in and get $500 cards to live, and they can come back 3 times. Those are things that our state government is funding. A couple more bills that I wanted to mention, and Dan mentioned the Trust Act, repealing the Trust Act, and that's extremely important because our law enforcement can't do anything when it comes to immigration, and that needs to be out of here. That was passed 2 years ago, I believe it was, and that has tied the hands of our law enforcement. So we have a bill to repeal the Trust Act. Another one that's out there is a resolution by Terry Bryant. And that resolution is a constitutional amendment stating that only Illinois citizens can vote. And that's really important. Yeah. So as you know, in some of the Chicago areas, they're having their school board members, or their schools, they can vote in school elections even if they're not a citizen. So that's something that Senator Bryant just brought forward, and it's really, really important. Let's see, one other thing, and I wanted to mention, and I found this pretty interesting, and one of our senators had a bill, Senate Bill 3596, and that was the Immigration Enforcement Act. And it does a myriad of things. It's quite lengthy. But one of the things that it does, it makes an asylum travel program. And that program would have some funds to get those folks that came to our state out of our state. And I thought that was quite witty, but it's actually a good idea. Move on down the road. I think Mr. Rice is from Chicago, and yeah, in May, the Chicago mayor is going to say, you're evicted from your hotel rooms. Now, yeah, and where are those people going to go? So that bill is a very good bill so that we can send them on down the road to another place until the federal government, and our next guest you'll get to hear from him, and I can't wait to hear from him, and that's Darren LaHood. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Sally. Dan, appreciate the work you guys are doing in Springfield on behalf of these situations. And I'd like to say that in order to keep Illinois, you need to vote for a Republican to be in office.
There you go.
Yes. Thank you very much, both of you. And then we'll have our special guests up here. Thank you very much.